My name is Sarah Gutierrez, and for the past year, I have been researching the war on drugs, its social, economical, and political implications in Colombia. I was born in Bogota, Colombia in 2002, the height of a violent history. My parents, as many others, soon fled the country in search of safety for their children. I grew up in Canada, but we visited often. When I saw Colombia, I saw big family cookouts, music, dancing, and exotic fruits. I saw walks with my grandmother where she showed me the flowers and greeted the gardeners. I saw farms and beaches and community. And then I saw narcos. I got older and it started to feel as if on these trips I was seeing Colombia in color, but upon return, everyone else saw it in black and white. My family and I were constantly on the receiving end of drug-related jokes and inaccurate racial stereotypes. The kids in high school wore graphic t-shirts with Escobar's mugshot. The kids in college did party drugs in the bathroom. Once, I was asked if my grandfather was in the cartel. My grandfather was a military general during the war on drugs in Colombia. I chose this page as a representation of my exhibition book because I think that it gives a great introduction to not only my topic, but why I chose it, why it's important to me, and the history of this issue in my personal life. I also chose this page because I think that it is a great physical representation of the content of my exhibition book and my layout format that I followed. This pattern of having heavy content on the left side, followed by a very plain, negative space-filled right side with just the page numbers. Anytime that there is a final project that's being shown or an important piece of text, it shows the skeleton versions of the progression of my final exhibition layout. And here you can also see that although the design of the page is cohesive with the rest of the book, the layout, that pattern that I'm following, actually changes to indicate that you are looking at a progress page in comparison to a final page. This is my final exhibition. The left-hand side is a scratched up mirror panel with 6 bullet holes in it. When the viewer approaches this mirrored panel to read this information, they will be met by the reflection of themselves with these bullet holes on them. It really makes you think, oh my God, what if this was me? And as you read that first fine print that appears right beneath the bullet holes, you see 1 kilogram of cocaine looks like this. Immediately, you're not only interested to understand why, but you're invested in the story. On the right-hand side of my exhibition, there are flaps. These are interactive components that viewers can lift in order to read the timeline in an engaging way. First, you see an image, and as you lift up the flap, you are met with the date and the information on what that image you just saw was and what was happening. A challenge when designing my booklet was how I would actually present this timeline in book format. I still wanted it to feel interactive so that I was capturing the audience's attention as they read each individual piece of the story. And so I decided to break up each date per spread. That way it gives that same interactive element of physically having to flip a page in order to get the next piece of the story. This page could be improved by optically adjusting the spacing in between numbers to be even, and also kerning the numbers. I see here that especially the 19 has a very bright kerning between the 1 and the 9 in comparison to all the other numbers. And then at the end, 2016, the 0 and the 1 is bright again. I think that the rag on this right-hand paragraph could also be adjusted to be a little bit prettier visually and less distracting. But overall, I think that these are small, minor adjustments, and I am happy with the way that this timeline presents the information, and I think that it still fits cohesively within the visual story of my book. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation and reading through my book. I hope that you learned a lot more about an issue that maybe you weren't that familiar on. I hope that it helped change your perspective. And overall, it was a pleasure being in your class this year. It was a pleasure learning how to share this story and this research with viewers in a visual way. I hope you have a great summer.